right now I feel like God is taking me through a season of learning about the early church,
Mm,
and in particular. So
mm,
I'm still reading scripture, and
right.
I'm also trying to start reading the church fathers and start reading more about, but the thing is, like you mentioned this, that context is so important,
Yeah.
because I think sometimes we imagine that the early church is like the church today, which was like, it's this massive group of people, and it wasn't. And at the very early stages, there were a lot of like heretical groups that were popping up saying different things.
Right.
And
Right.
that also comes into play in terms of what the church fathers, what the apostles, what Paul, why he says certain things is in direct relation to what was happening at the time. And so if we're not aware of those groups and what was happening in that context, like you said, we're going to read it very differently. And
Yeah. Like,
because, yeah,
no,
go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry. I didn't want to interrupt.
No, I totally agree with you. The more I find out about this, the more I see that it's not black and white. There's a lot of information and a lot of nuance, and
Yeah, there's
the
there's this
thing.
idea in some traditions you can read the Bible flatly, and that would
Hmm.
be my tradition more so, and or dynamically. And I think a lot of like even what I was taught about women in leadership, we're taking contextually from Paul, and was such a mischaracterization of Paul, and missing the larger macro narrative and understanding what was actually happening. But that's a different podcast, because I know there's so many things we could dive
Get
into
into.
and begin to unpack. But the beauty of Scripture and understanding and taking time to understand the larger fabric of what is going on. But I know that many of us, you said it earlier when your husband talked about UFOs. Why aren't they talking about it? Because people are paying their bills. And and I understand people are looking for hope. People are looking, some of the people are just spiritually just breathing from weekend to weekend. And so the idea of studying to get into macro narratives and stuff requires some level of margin. And I think the church needs to get better at serving people and meeting them where they're at.
Yeah.
And um, sometimes it's difficult. You have to pick your battles. And I think people are battling through life, and you want to shore them up and you want to keep them focused on Jesus. And there's a lot of distractions in terms of debates and theology that are not helping them, but it may help them dismiss Jesus. And that's bothersome to me.
Yeah, or distract from Jesus or
Exactly.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
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 And somebody asked, if you say that you follow them, how come you only accept parts of it? But I think the point is that when you read the church fathers or the early church, you can't, like you said, take it and just read it flatly, because they're often responding to something going on at the time. So they're
Well,
often
like
responding to,
Athanasius, we talked about 2 weeks ago, right? And he was
yeah,
responding to the Arian heretical. They were taking the one iota,
yeah,
changed the meaning. So Jesus is not fully God. And Athanasius is used by God as an early church father, a pastor in Alexandria, Egypt, right?
yeah.
That's where he was from. And
Hmm.
and he was used, but he was an imperfect person. He had a temper. He was incredibly stubborn, and it served the purpose of resisting the onslaught of the pressure that man felt. He was
Yes,
exiled 5 times in 17 years, and
yes.
he wasn't doing that because he was just stubborn. It was a conviction. And
Mm.
thank God he stood his ground. That's why we have Jesus, without Jesus being fully God and fully human. And that's one of the early church fathers. So all of those church fathers have shadow sides. And
Yeah,
that's
totally.
what I think we miss sometimes, even in our veneration of saints and stuff.